Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Estate and Succession Mastery. How are you, Juanita?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
Perfectly well, thanks. And I can hear you perfectly well, too. So
good. We're off to a good start.
We're off to a good start. So, yes, we just decided this would be the last Estate and Succession Mastery for 2020. I think we're all very busy at the end of the year, and there's tons on, and we're looking forward to a very exciting 2021. So we're going to start the week commencing the 1st of February for our
put that in your diaries.
So put that in your diary and don't miss it. We've got some big things coming along next year. But today we know exactly where Juanita is because pot plant's still there.
And, pot plant's alive. I'll surprise you next year with a different pot plant.
That's right.
And maybe a more scenic background.
That's right. We'll have to get those. But no, so I'm down in Dubbo today seeing some clients. And yesterday, Juanita, as you know, I did a presentation to a whole group of farmers up in near Laidley. And today down in Dubbo, tomorrow I'm off to back up to Boona to talk to some people up there. But it's just been really interesting. And I thought we might chat about some of the things that have been conversation pieces and so on, and love your comments on this, Juanita. And what I've really struck yesterday and today in the meetings has been the great tendency for the parents not to let go. You know, Dad wants to die with his boots on, and the next generation are coming through. There's always a struggle, a conflict between Dad's generation and the generation coming through in regard to how to set up a structured transition from one generation to the next. And how have you found the best way to deal with this?
It's something we see all the time, and there's no wrong about it, is there? It's perfectly understandable for the older generation to want to work and contribute as long as they can. Normally, the younger generation is sort of chomping at the boot to get in there, and that's often where the angst will come. I think the best way to handle it is by having that open communication. There we go. Right.
2 minutes 45.
Yeah, and I guess reiterating what we've said before, but that is the way to deal with that situation. Communication right from the start before things go pear-shaped, and that puts everyone in the best position to go forward in a really good manner.
Yeah, look, I'll talk just generally about one of the conversations I've had. Let's just say it's been in the last week with a family, mum and dad and 2 children who are taking over the business. It's not a rural business actually, but it's the kids are coming through. They're taking over the business. Mum and dad, have been running the business for years. Dad's built it up, and to be honest, he's a lovely guy, but he just loves what he does in the business, and he doesn't play golf, he doesn't do bowls, he doesn't want to go and swim by the beach or go fishing swim at the beach or go fishing, anything like that. He just loves what he does. He loves the community, the contact with the customers. He loves getting out there, and he's always been a great relationship person. So his whole life, he's been the guy that people want to come into and talk to before they buy stuff. And so what we had a meeting with this family, and basically, and this is what we do with most rural families too, is say, okay, well, how can you transition some of the roles onto the next generation? And he's looking at a 6-year, actually 5 years ago he said in 5 years he'd be out. Now he's added another 6 years on top of that. So the kids are being patient, but they're pretty much running most of the stuff now. But what happens is we had a meeting and said, okay, what are the things you love doing? What are the things that you really enjoy and get energy out of? And it's not, it's not doing the planning or the accounting or anything like that. It's contact and communication, in his case, with the customers and so on. And so we're sort of handing over the other responsibilities to the 2 kids coming through and taking away the stuff from Dad that he doesn't enjoy so much. And I think that's what you've got to do in, and I always use the example, when are you going to hand over, the decision making on who buys the bulls for the farm, Dad? It's kind of, what are all the key roles that Dad's always done, but one day he's going to have to hand over to someone else? When's the best time to be doing the irrigating? When do we buy fertilizer and so on. So yeah, it's interesting, but I mean, it's okay that dads want to die with their boots on too, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's totally understandable, isn't it? When you we constantly hear stories of clients of that older generation in the family that feel if they give that away, then they've got nothing. Their life has been so dedicated and enriched by doing that. So, like I said, no right or wrong. It's just trying to reach a happy medium, I guess, for everyone. But also realizing that the assets of the family are the older generations. You know, you talk often, Mark, about you know, not having an expectation. So it's really, you know, assisting that older generation as best we can to transition and enjoy enjoy that time of their lives, as well as prepare for what will happen once they're gone.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Yeah, say no right or wrong answer. I think there's a lot of fear sometimes in the older generation that once they give up running the farm, they're going to be kicked off the farm, or they're going to be kicked out of the business there. And because they love so much what they've done for all those years, I mean, that's when people die, is when you take away their fun and their enjoyment. And so I think there's a lot of fear from the older generation that that's what the younger generation are trying to to do, to kick them off, to move them on, to get them out. But I mean, most rural families, mum and dad still live on the farm in many cases, even though the sons do get to the point where they're taking over all the work, all the running of the business and so on, and mum and dad retire, you know, until such time as from a health point of view they need to move forward. So I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have around the issue, but also that mum and dad need to feel safe that you know, it is okay and everyone's still going to look after them, and no one's kicking them off anything, but they just want to make sure there's an opportunity for the kids to take up the reins and start doing things as they probably did to their fathers.
I think it's also a particularly important conversation, not only to think about what will happen when both parents pass away, but also when one or the other passes away. So, for example, if the parent had been the father, for example, had been the primary worker on the farm, but has brought in some of the younger generation, be it the daughter or the sons, to help. When he passes away, you want to make sure that it's a really fine balance between providing for the next generation, bringing them into that sort of business environment, but also making sure mum's got somewhere to live and isn't going to be booted off by any of the children as that time passes. And, you know, it's not just the male and the mother in that situation, it's vice versa. So, you know, if the mother was to pass away first, or the non-worker or the worker, you know, we don't want to be judgmental or sexist here. It's looking at each individual person and thinking, what does that look like, and what do they need to be comfortable after the first one passes away? Then, of course, what do we want to see happen to everything when we both go?
Yeah, very valuable, and you know, it sort of ties in with other conversations I've had this week. I actually did a video. If anyone watches my Facebook page, Rural Succession Solutions on Facebook, I did a video about entitlement, expectation, and so on, and the conversations we have with clients' children in regard to what we call the gratitude conversation, or the gratitude mindset, and that is having conversations with kids about saying, well, you know, when mum and dad do pass on, you know, what are your thoughts in regard to what would be fair amongst the family and all that sort of stuff. And I made a comment there that there's about 1 or 2 children in 100 that are entitled brats. All they're thinking about is what they're going to get out of it. But for the balance, 98% of the children probably that I've spoken to over the last couple of years, you know, there's just a whole lot of gratitude. And I think parents would actually be proud to know they've done a good job bringing up their kids, to know that 98% of the children that I talk to really just say, look, we just want mum and dad to be okay. We want them to have a good time. You know, they've done all the hard work. You know, sure, it'd be great to have the opportunity to take over the business or whatever, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure whatever mum and dad need is what they're going to have, and so on. And you know, when I sat down and thought about the statistics around these conversations, it was really heartening.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times that next generation just wants some information or some clarity. it may not be that they're wanting X and Y. It just the lack of information and clarity and communication is what causes the angst. Better the devil you know, I suppose, in some ways than you don't. And just by being able to verbalise it and pass on that information can be an important stepping stone forward for the family.
Yeah.
And I guess help behaviours moving forward. One would hope.
You hope. Yeah, look, I mean, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. The kids I have conversations with aren't sitting there saying, hey, what am I going to get out of this? What they're sitting there saying is, can someone just give us a clue as to what mum and dad's plans are so that we know how to get on with our lives? And if mum and dad want to sell up and move to Acapulco, well, nobody ever has a problem with that. It's just, can you let us know so we don't invest all our time and effort into helping on the farm at the expense of us getting on with our lives. And people just want to know what the plan is so they know how they fit into the plan, whatever that is. It's not like they're waiting for money. They're just waiting for, I guess, direction. And if there is an opportunity, that's great. And if there isn't, that's fine too. I mean, no one's sitting around waiting for mum and dad to solve all their financial grief. They're just waiting to see how they can be involved. And a lot of times there's pride in the family property and all that sort of stuff. And so they'd love the opportunity, but it's life will still go on if mum and dad decide to just pack it all in, sell it, and move to the coast. I think that's an important thing for everyone to remember.
Absolutely. And Mark, in your experience, how do you find when there's multiple children in that next generation, how do you find what can work to help them with their communication to avoid family disputes down in the future?
Sorry, I was just looking at some messages here that had come through, but it wasn't someone. We've actually got a spammer watching this. So can you please ask the question again? Because looking
obviously
at the messages didn't help my
it's not just communication between the older generation and the next. It's also between the next generation where there's multiple children. So, you've dealt with a lot of families, and how do you find that you're able to help those conversations?
Yeah, look, it's been interesting. In the last couple of months, 2-3 months, I've had a lot of conversations in regard to people where there's multiple number of children, and there might be just 1 or 2 properties that can be handed down to the next generation. And it's a really fine balancing act. So say, for example, I mean, I've got one client where there's 8 kids and 1 farm. So, it meant I had to have the conversation with 7 other children in regard to how their endowment from their mum and dad, if they pass early, is going to be a deferred endowment. It's, instead of, they can't expect to line up now before the fullness of time of what mum and dad have. Mum and dad expect to live another 20-30 years and then to be able to hopefully gift something to each of the children. Now, if they get taken early, they still want the farm to stay in the family, but there's not enough money to give the farm to one of the kids because it's only going to generate income for 1 child. And the other kids are really just going to have to sit and wait for the fullness of time when mum and dad would have liked to have handed down some endowment or gift or benefit to them. And once again, it's just really about communication. So if I can sit down and talk with kids and say, look, this is in mum and dad's heart, this is what they'd love to happen. Practically, this is what can happen. And so we find a balance between the two so that, everyone doesn't have unrealistic expectations. No one's turning up saying, I can't wait for mum and dad to go so I can get some cash. No one does. Well, 98% don't. But the rest are totally understanding if it's explained to them properly, if you can have a conversation, if you can communicate and so on. And whilst we keep coming back to that all the time, that just is the greatest truism out of everything we have conversations about, Juanita, is communication is what it's all about. And whatever your plans are, just make sure the family is aware, and that's what stops the squabbles. Really.
And what I was thinking as you were talking, Mark, often we'll come across situations where those conversations haven't happened. So in an ideal world, the appropriate advice and assistance has been obtained and the succession plan and the estate plan is in place. What happens when someone passes away and it's messy and you have numerous children or beneficiaries, or including potentially a parent in dispute? So, being that today's topic is how to avoid those disputes, I guess it's also what happens if they're there, and so we really need to try to fix it, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Ideally you fix all these things before mum and dad pass away, but a lot of times there's conflict in families while everyone's still around, everyone's still alive. And once again, it's the fear of the unknowns. All the conflict comes from communication issues. So if mum and dad are still alive and there's 3-4 kids or whatever, and I run into this all the time, there's already conflict. And once again, it's because there's been no communication, and the kids are sort of, wandering along aimlessly, not knowing what the future holds, what they should plan, what they should do, and nobody knows how to have the conversation. So the kids don't want to ask mum and dad because that seems like they're being needy and sort of, chasing money. And mum and dad don't know how to fix the problem. They don't know how to solve the transfer to the next generation, how to make it fair, how to make it good for everybody as much as they can. So they do nothing. They procrastinate. They put it off and so on. But look, and as I say, communication is the only way we can solve that. Now, if you haven't had the communication and mum and dad pass away and the kids are already in a blue, I mean, that's just going to cost the family a bomb. And unless you can get someone in to sort of mediate, and someone who understood what mum and dad's intentions were, and someone who can have that conversation with the kids and stop them from fighting. And I know this is not your part of the estate planning process, but stop them from going to lawyers and just racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of costs. Many, and you'd see this when people do come to you in these sort of situations. I mean, it's just a waste of time. This could have been solved so easily with some conversations and some direction. And it still can be saved if people come at it from the right attitude and come from it understanding that whatever mum and dad left, and for whatever reason they left it in that way, even if they didn't get to set it up as well as they could have, they still cared enough to want to leave something for the kids, not to have the kids fight about it.
And I think getting the appropriate advice, and so having someone to give advice that's practical and common sense, and being able to take that emotion out of it, that as a matter of course all the family members will usually carry with them. So, being able to put that, this is where an advisor is very valuable, whether it be before or afterwards, just being able to put all that emotion to the side and just look at the stark reality and give some common sense, practical advice.
Yeah, and look, I'm not trying to stir the pot here with sons and daughters-in-law, but I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the issues post-death are caused by the in-laws, the daughters-in-law, the sons-in-law, in the ear of their spouse. And it's a sad thing to say, but I mean, if you can sort of take that influence away and just make sure that it's the kids talking to each other, the actual blood children are the ones having the conversations, you get a much better outcome, because oftentimes, when people get married, they have their own children, they have different numbers of children to their other siblings and so on, and it just really can create some, from usually from the outsiders, some expectations which aren't realistic. But I just wanted to, if I may, Juanita, just, whoops, what am I doing here? I created a little scorecard, how to avoid family conflict scorecard, and it's one of the things I handed out yesterday to the group when I was talking near Laidley, and I'll be handing it out tomorrow when I'm talking to all the people up there. And I just want to go through, I thought it'd just be useful to take 10 minutes, just to go through some of the questions I ask. And the first one is, do you know exactly how to start your estate and succession planning process, and who you need to involve to ensure the best result? Simple yes or no questions. Do you know how to start the planning process, and who do you need to involve to ensure your best result? So what's your advice in regard to that question?
To make a start. So often that
how do you
question.
make a start?
I think you need to pick up the phone and talk to someone, talk to a trusted advisor and get some direction, or ask friends. So ask friends of their experiences if they have someone that they recommend that can help you, and then pick up the phone and have a chat to that person. So it's making a start. It's picking up the phone. It's having that first conversation to get the ball rolling. Or alternatively, another useful thing, Mark, is as you run through in your steps, I guess, is just putting some thoughts down on paper and starting to crystallize your thoughts and your wishes. Yep. Whether that be before or after you make that phone call to get some initial help.
Yeah, look, one of the things I often say, and people may say that I have a vested interest in saying this, but this is just the truth, is that you can't solve these issues from within the family. It's pointless mum and dad just sitting down with the kids and having a conversation, because, for a million different reasons, and you really need someone from outside to come in and start the conversation with the family. And that's why I say, do you know who to talk to? And you're absolutely right. Talk to others who have been through the process. Talk to people who have done it well. Don't talk to people who haven't been able to work out how to do it. Find people, friends who have gone through a successful family transition or whatever, and look and take their advice. And the question on who you need to involve to ensure the best result. As I've often said, there's about 3% of the lawyers in Australia are good at this, you guys being one of them. And so there. The analogy is if you have a brain tumor, you wouldn't go to a general practitioner, you'd go to a specialist. And with your estate and succession planning, if you're having these conversations and you're thinking about your estate and your succession plan, chances are it's reasonable to significant sized estate, and you need to get proper advice. So don't go to Johnny, the corner store sort of lawyer who specializes in 20 different things. So he says, look out and seek out people who specialize in estate and succession planning, and give them a call and get them to help you to start with the questions you need to answer to make some progress here, and help you with the communication between the generations. Not everyone's good at that part. Obviously, that's what we do, and hopefully we do well. But in worst case scenarios, at least start with someone who knows what they're talking about in an estate and succession planning lawyer who's a specialist in that area.
I think we certainly agree that some communication between family members is always better than none. So that is a fantastic start. In my experience, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Mark, that often when you have the family sitting around a table having this discussion, there will naturally be some that overtalk the situation. There will be some that butt in and don't let other people finish. There'll be some that don't say anything because they're too intimidated or don't understand the process. And so I would never say don't try that, because that's an awesome thing to do to get everyone and start talking about it. But there will often be, depending on the dynamic, a need for someone to come in and assist you.
Yeah, I should reframe what I say. You've made a valid point there. Yeah, the family sitting down and having the initial conversation, it is a good idea, because the greatest issue is, of course, because no one talks to each other. Probably where I'm going with that is that if that's all you do is just have conversations within your family, that's where the problems come from, is that, people will say nothing because they have respect for mum and dad and they don't want to argue with them, and so on. And the loud one will get heard, the quiet one, the shy one, the youngest won't get heard, and so on. So, start with having a conversation. Start talking between the generations, but be looking for where you can go to seek professional advice, because whilst you need to start the conversation, the only way you're going to fix everything is someone from outside the family. It's you're never going to fix it from within the family, but you can identify some of the problems from within the family. Look, the second, and which leads really perfectly into the second question, is that do you have open and regular communication with your spouse and your children in regard to the estate and succession planning topic? So, which is really what we've just been saying. You do, even though I'll maintain you can't fix it from within, you do need to start talking about it and identify the fact that you need to get professional help. Okay. Third question, so just moving on, is do you know how to create fairness between your children And have you had the conversation with each of them in regard to what your thoughts and plans are? And this is
That
just
is a
one of
tough
the biggest
one.
issues, isn't it?
Tough one. So some people, it's not,
Yeah.
I suppose, some people have, it's very equal. You have, you might have a pot of cash, or you might have 3 properties and 3 kids, and you can split it up very equally. But the usual situation is that you have kids in different spots wanting to do different things. You don't have an equal number of assets, and so it becomes a really difficult exercise potentially, unless you get help, to achieve what you want to do, to be fair to all the children. And you know, as we always say, Mark, fair doesn't always necessarily mean completely equal, but that's a process that we go through.
Yeah, and I mean that's been one of the great tools and resources that you know, we've created in conjunction with Tom and yourself, is the distribution matrix. And you know, once you've been through the due diligence, is actually sitting down and working out what your thoughts are in regard to what's fair to leave to each of the children, and to create fairness. Because if someone's been working on the farm for 20, 25 years, and you know, the other child's just been hanging out, having a good time, and you know, not caring so much about contributing to the family wealth, then you know, equal is just absolutely not fair. You can't have one child doing 25 years of work and the other child doing nothing and give them the same amount of benefit. So, but there's also a whole range of other issues that we go through in regard to creating fairness between the siblings and so on. And you know, that's something I'm happy to talk to people about if they want more information. It's just not that simple as creating a spreadsheet. There's conversations and understanding what each of the children's dreams and aspirations are, and so on as well. And that's just such a key part of it. Which is leading into the next question. You know exactly what your children's plans are for the future, and you are not experiencing any communication issues with them or their spouses.
Does anyone ever tick that one? That's a tough one to tick, I would think. Yeah.
Not yet. You know exactly what your children's plans are, and you're not experiencing any communication issues with them or their spouses. Yep, haven't had anyone tick that one yet.
Yeah,
or
and
maybe one or two.
That'll be constantly changing too, won't it? So, you know, that's not a set in stone tick or cross. That's something that's ever evolving.
Yeah, look, absolutely, and as I've discovered, especially over the last 12 months, is that, you know, especially with younger children, you know, teenagers through to mid-20s and maybe a bit more, is that, you know, it's very hard, even if I have a conversation with them right now and try and work out what their dreams and aspirations are. In 12 months' time, it could be completely different, or in 2 years' time, you know, that child may have changed their minds, and they're entitled to change their minds too. So it's really an ongoing thing, making sure you're always aware, and kids won't always necessarily be absolutely honest with mum and dad, but fear of hurting their feelings or putting a spanner in the works or something. So it's one of the things we do, and I hope we do that well, is to keep on top of what their real thoughts are. The final thing, so we've only got a couple of minutes or so left, is do you have in place a fully documented and funded plan which creates absolute lifetime certainty for your spouse, as well as financial security where required for those you love and care for?
Tick. Again, the majority certainly wouldn't tick that, but that's the end result, isn't it? So
absolutely, that's the ideal outcome: a fully documented plan, a funded plan, which creates certainty, confidence, and security for your spouse initially. And that's always my key priority: is make sure mum and dad are taken care of if anything happens to either one of them. But also financial security where required. And that doesn't mean you've got to make financial security for all your children, but you've got to make sure that whichever one of you is left out of mum and dad, there's enough financial security there for whatever your needs will be, and then you can work out the rest from there. So that's my 5 questions on how to avoid.
And if you tick all of them, then you're awesome.
Yeah.
And you don't need us. You don't need our help.
After you've dealt with us, you'll tick all of them, yes, but I don't find many that tick them all to start.
No.
Some will be able to tick some, but very rarely.
Yeah, that's right.
You can tick all. Hey, look, time's up for this year, Juanita, and I just want to say thanks. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you every week, and looking forward to coming back bigger and brighter next year in 2021, the week starting the 1st of February.
Yep.
We think everyone needs some free time, and we're we need some free time at the moment because with the run up to Christmas, we're sort of run off our feet a bit getting everything finished. So, but I hope that everyone has been listening to these during the year, has got some value from them. I mean, you only need to pick up one idea. They're only short, sharp 30-minute sessions that we run. And if you watch it once and you pick up an idea and it prompts you or encourages you to go off and do something about creating certainty, security and confidence for your family, then Juanita, you and I have done a great job. And what do you think?
I couldn't agree more. So I look forward to coming back next year and over the, having a nice break, and I hope everyone has a good Christmas break and coming up with some new exciting topics for next season. And we'll have to do something different, Mark. I don't know. We'll have to have a different plan or a different background, but it's been a pleasure talking to everyone this year. I look forward to coming back next year.
Absolutely. And Merry Christmas, everybody. See you next year.
Bye.